All right, welcome back to another episode of the Ad Creative Insider podcast. Today I am here with Christine, and it's a special episode. It's actually the second episode that's recorded in English. So welcome, Christine. You are the lead creative strategist at Meroda, a brand from Amsterdam, from the Netherlands. And before I introduce too much, maybe I hand it quickly over to you. Maybe you can talk a little bit about your background, what you did before being a creative strategist at Meroda, giving a little bit of background to yourself, how you actually ended up in e-commerce, in creative strategy. That would be awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much for the intro. I'm super excited to be here, and I decided to do this episode in English so that more people and more brands can find the content and that they can actually also know more about DatAds, and just in general, it might be useful for more than German brands. So yeah, in a nutshell, I started with e-commerce even before I went to university. I studied in Mannheim. It's a very famous German university, where I graduated business administration. And by the way, I have a great e-com network from Mannheim. I still work with a lot of people that are still situated in Mannheim. And I had my first online store when I was just before I started university. So I had my own fashion store, started around 18 years old. And then I did everything. So I was kind of like the one-man show, doing the media buying, doing content, email marketing. Like, I built my own Shopify store, things like that I'm pretty sure a lot of people are familiar with the whole game. But as I started university, it was kind of very overwhelming for me to just deal with all the supply chain topics, logistics. So I just really thrived in doing ads. So I sold the store and I started to work as a freelance media buyer back then. So this was kind of like my first 5 years. And this is already 12 years in. Yeah. So yeah, I'm getting old. So the first 5 years I started with media buying, and I was just a freelance media buyer for all kinds of different brands. Sorry, I just have to adjust my headphones all the time because my hair is inside of it. I did media buying for a lot of clients, mainly in the US back then, just because that was how I found my projects. And they were in all kinds of industries like jewelry, pet brands, supplements, like you name it. But back then, since media buying is also pretty time bound, it wasn't like very efficient to just work with US time zones. So that's where I started to look for EU projects. And then I landed a great opportunity at About You, the very famous German multi-brand store. So that's where it kind of started, with me upgrading and also having the first taste of creative strategy and internationalizing a brand and expanding into other markets. So that's where I actually learned so many things about how you localize a brand in different markets, what the action plan looks like, how you can make use of mass marketing campaigns with influencers, with creators, and how you just adapt the whole content towards like the target audience and the target market that you want to enter. And then during the last years, like during the last 5 or 6 years, I've been mainly in key performance creative growth roles for 7 and 8 figure brands such as PT Paula, Bionic Gym, and Closetter, which are in the US. I've also worked for a long time with a lot of streetwear brand in Germany. It was just kind of like a momentum, and I worked with very famous streetwear brands such as A3B, More Money, More Love, White Wally, Makani, which are mainly active in the EU market. And then, interesting enough, I came across quite a few Dutch brands such as Drippy Amsterdam, Blank Sunglasses, Zapply, and this is where it all led to my current role at Meroda, where I'm managing the performance creative team. So yeah.
What a journey. You already also mentioned that internationalization was actually on a very special topic for you since your About You days. It's also a topic that we are going to explore a little bit today. Maybe for the people that don't know Meroda, maybe you can also give a little introduction what Meroda is actually selling, just for a little bit of context. And then we can go into the deep dive and discover how Meroda is actually doing the creative strategy of site, especially the international and EU expansion.
Yeah. So Meroda is a beauty brand that is coming from the Netherlands. So we sell makeup and we sell different makeup categories. So we have skin, we have eyes, and like we just have some additional complementary products. But we really position ourselves as, and we want to position ourselves as the best cosmetics and makeup brand in the EU by 2027. So that's like a hard promise, but I'm pretty sure that we can achieve this. And we are mainly selling a couple of hero products, which our business is basically also based upon. And then we also have a couple of new product launches every year. So the Netherlands is the main market. And from then on, it started and it scaled, but then like we decided that we have to expand further, just to keep that momentum because the brand is really made for a lot of different people, markets, skin types. So this was kind of the fantastic opportunity to start really exploring, expansion. So yeah.
Whenever I talk to brands, and some already think about after generating a couple of €1,000 in revenue, thinking about, okay, we should go international. Maybe you can also give some background story when actually Meroda thought, okay, now we need to introduce our product to other European countries such as Germany, Austria, etc. When did they actually, maybe also in terms of revenue, if you can talk about, I don't know, was it 7 figures? Were they already an 8-figure brand when they said, okay, now we would like to focus on other European markets? When in your since you also work with other big brands, when is, in your opinion, the right time to make the next move towards other countries and expand the brand? Is it first focusing on on your home market, turning, I don't know, multiple 7 figures there, or when is the right time to go to the next market?
Yeah, so of course it depends if you're an EU brand or US brand because in the US everything's very different.
Yeah.
But of course, but I would say that when you are kind of like at the almost like at 8 figures, then and really like at 5-6 million revenue a year, then it would definitely make sense to start to think about expansion, especially if you are from a smaller EU country, just because at some point you can't scale more than what you've actually done so far. So this is also what came down to the decision at Meroda, and not only, but it's usually like just comes down to scale, because the Netherlands, for example, is a fantastic market. It's very e-com driven, e-commerce is thriving, but it's very small. So if you're a brand that leans on 1 or 2 hero products, as we do, and which is often the case in beauty, you kind of hit the ceiling pretty quickly. So you can scale for a while, but you will like probably not go far beyond, and your CPAs will raise. Suddenly you're burning like more than you're bringing back, and at that point you really want to keep the momentum to step outside your regular borders. This is also something that we did at About You. So they were constantly asking themselves the right questions even before they reach that high level of scale. So they were
Mm.
constantly asking themselves, like, where do we get synergy effects of what we already have? Where is demand obvious? And where do we see low competition and strong e-com growth? So that's a very key question to ask. So when I was at About You, we were active in Germany and Nordics, I think. And
Hmm.
right now they're online and localized, and I think about 30 markets, which is like
It's
very
crazy.
amazing to see. Yeah, it's like really crazy. So of course, like there is saturation, which is again a big factor if you're a smaller country, because you might have thrown every single use case you can throw at your target audience, and launching a new product helps. But if you wait until then, you've also lost efficiency. So that's kind of like another thing where you see the rise of need that you need to expand. And also, of course, there's risk diversification. So if you lay all your eggs in one basket, that's always more risky. So it's always good to diversify. And yeah, just having revenue spread across multiple markets gives you more resilience.
100%, 100%. So, since we would like to talk today about the specific example of Meroda, usually, a lot of our listeners are actually from Germany and they know only the big market. Germany is much bigger than the Netherlands, so there's much more opportunity before you actually need to make the next step to another European country, especially for German speakers. You can expand easily to Switzerland, easily to Austria, easily in quotation marks, of
Yeah.
course, since it always brings a little bit of issues with it. But in case of Meroda, as as you mentioned, the Netherlands is a little bit of a smaller country compared to other European countries. So what was actually the first step that you took regarding the expansion? Was it what was like the first target country that you entered, and how did you try to conquer it?
For Dutch brands, the no-brainer is Belgium, but I'm not mentioning this because you should include Belgium always in your targeting, which you're from the Netherlands, just because like it's the same language and same like everything. After that, most brands go to Germany or just the DACH region as a whole because it's just a
Mm,
massive opportunity and culturally we're very similar. Um, that was the second choice as well for Meroda, and then the UK is another classic choice because English content can often be just reused with minimal localization. For beauty and for fashion, France and Spain are very good options to look at. This is what like I would have like as a third step. And there are also those blue ocean markets, I would say, that a lot of brands neglect, which are like Central Eastern European markets, where also About You is very active.
mm.
Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, just because the CPMs are so low in those countries and you have low competition, and if you have a good advertising budget you can really like make a big difference very fast because you will be a first mover. So that's kind of like the game plan for me.
Gotcha. But based on all these options, especially in Europe and all the different languages, etc., how do you actually evaluate which market to enter first? Is it possibilities? So, for example, I mean, Germany is pretty damn close, especially for me living in Cologne. It's like a 1 hour drive to get to the
Yeah.
Netherlands. Also the other way around, of course. Um, how do you know which market to enter first? Do you make like small, minor Facebook ads test in every country and see, okay, where if there's something sticking on the wall, or how do you go about deciding on which country to enter first?
Yeah. So definitely I would say go for the market that feels closest to your mentality and where you also see demand. So I love looking at Google Trends and Amazon keyword search volume. This is
Mm,
something that not a lot of people do. For example, to see if there is demand already for a product like this, or you will need to educate that audience first and create it from scratch because that's the harder way. We've tried it like with other brands. It's very difficult. Sometimes it's impossible or it just takes such a long time. So another thing to look at is what your competitors are going for. So if one of your direct competitors isn't in the market and you share the same target audience, I would say go for it. And if they've just entered that market, I would say go for it again because the market isn't owned yet. So the real challenge is where like a competitor is really built up in that market and it's always like building deep penetration. For example, in Germany, like in the supplement industry, you have more nutrition, so it will be like very difficult for brands to enter Germany with that giant. So you like really get the share of the cake. So it really also like depends on if the whole trend and demand is just a hype or a trend, because for example, you have some trend products that just, get very famous on TikTok and then they just die off. This is something that happened, for example, with those Korean glass masks that you've been seeing everywhere last year. And now you don't really see them that much.
Yeah.
This is because like you can evaluate if it's a trend or not when you look at like the Google Trends chart and also like the Amazon search volume. So if you see like a very high peak and then it just drops, then it's obviously a trend. But if you see a peak and like not that high of a peak, but more like kind of a volatile line, that's a good sign. Even if there is volatility, that means it's a stable market and it has stable demand. So that's how I usually like to differentiate between high product and stable products that could be used for expansion.
How many years is it actually ago when Meroda decided to enter the German market? Is it also one of the key markets by now? How long did it took them to conquer Germany and other European countries? And like, also from a time perspective, because probably you won't conquer a market within 1 month. Most of the time, it takes a little bit longer. Maybe you can also give and share some insights. What was then the market for Meroda that hit first, and how long did it take until it's working on a little bit?
it's still a work in progress. So this is something that I really want to stress out, because I've seen this many times where brands just try out the market and just, let's say, for a month or just a couple of months, and they decide that it's not worth the risk, and they just stop investing and start building upon. So it's really important that you first start off with the MVP, and then you kind of build up if you're like really serious about the market and if you see there is potential. So there are a lot of ways where you can just test out your MVP. And what we definitely like to do is localize on a budget first. So we'll take best performing ads, dub or translate them. I love dubbing ads, like best performing ads into other languages. You can use AI nowadays very easily. I love HeyGen for dubbing. It's like you can almost like not tell the difference, especially if you're more mature audience focused. They almost never tell the difference if it's like a real ad or not. Then you need to translate the website and set the payment processors for that country, and you run it for at least a month. So then if you are break even after a month, that's a great win, because obviously that's all new customers that you brought in, and that's where you kind of like have the proof of concept, and then you can actually let the funnel play out and start to build upon, and then you build better ads, and then you localize everything, and then you just do the next steps and start just digging deeper into the funnel and scaling. So yeah.
Now you basically give the whole framework. So
Kind
what
of.
I want to kind of, so I want to really dive into a lot of topics that you just mentioned here. So you said you first start with the hero product, as I heard.
Yeah.
So you have 1 to 2 hero products that you have in your home market, and then you enter a new market and you test it for a month. You first take the best performing ads from the Netherlands. In that case, you take it from the best performing product and you launch them with a dub creative. Maybe you can quickly talk about what do you mean by dub creative. Maybe some don't know actually what it's all about, what it actually is. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that one, and also how different, based on your experience, is actually the target audience. Do, for example, in the beauty case of Meroda, do actually the target audience differ a lot, like how you approach people, on what kind of messages do they respond, and what are like the key differences, especially from a Dutch brand being pretty close actually to Germany,
Yeah.
coming to a German market.
Yeah. So, of course, the closer the cultures as Netherlands, Germany, it's very easy. Like the easier it is. If you cross different regions or like even overseas, then you have to adapt your messaging. And even like in very close cultures like Netherlands and Germany and UK, you still need to adapt your tone of voice, because just people's mentality and just the people's daily life is different. For beauty, for example, that means recognizing different skin tones, hair, even like beauty standards. So tone of voice changes. For example, like a calm, explanatory kind of tone might land one market, while other markets like a more emotional, hyped kind of feel and look of the ad. So it's very important that you also take that into account. And that's why you kind of need to do your homework on how people respond and like what kind of ads are being run in that market, even if they're not like in your industry. You just need to like do your homework and research what is the tone of voice that market is actually using, and if that messaging that you currently have and the use cases are applicable for the country that you are targeting, because we like to work with different use cases for not USPs, use cases. This is something that gets like distracted very quickly
Yeah,
and a lot of brands. So
100%. Yeah.
yeah, so it really depends what use cases you want to transfer over to the target market. And especially if your target market is, let's say, overseas, you want to go to Japan, like that's a totally different story. But I like to give an example for from Loop earplugs. Everyone knows them. But for example, they have the use case like silence, and silence is something that Japan is actually like very like if you are in the metro, it's already silent, so you don't really need the earplugs. So they were kind of advertising the earplugs as like a silent way to ride the metro. But like Japanese people were responding like it's already
Yeah.
silent. What do you need them for? So it was kind of like, yeah, we need to adjust the whole, like we need to adapt to the culture, because it wouldn't make sense. So I would just say you really need to kind of keep your core promise the same in terms of positioning, but adapt the outer layer. And for example, for the essence of Meroda, it's like effortless shade match, confidence without the fuss. This travels everywhere. but the way you deliver it, so the tone of voice, the visual style, even the creator guidelines per market, they differ.
That's super interesting. So bring it back into practice. When you launched those best performing ads from the Dutch creators at that standpoint, and you went into the German market, was it completely different? How did the performance look like? What were the KPIs that you take a look at? Was it then, let's say, the first month was all right, something sticked at the wall? How did you work on the first iterations? Did you say, okay, now we need to work with German influencers because they, of course, may pronounce something different than like an AI generated voiceover, etc. Maybe you can walk us a little bit through how you actually proceed after you first launched a first test campaign. Maybe also you can also mention how much budget is needed for testing, what is sufficient, and how you see that topic.
Yeah, so we entered with like Meta, of course. Like I would definitely say Meta is the first platform to just validate if something makes sense. And what we did is, yeah, like dub the best performing ads into Dutch, but we quickly, into German, from Dutch into German, and from English into German, wherever we had English ads. And we definitely saw that German ads definitely perform much better than English. Like that's a
Of
no-brainer.
course.
So you always like, they will perform maybe at some point like English ads, but you always want to think about how you can localize, especially in Germany and France. Like those are countries that are just no-brainers. And we quickly identified that just Germany likes a much more overhyped tone of voice. So like they have their own kind of expressions, and like
Hmm.
just everything is much more German. Also, like Germans are very like logical when it comes to purchases, so you really need to take that into account. I would say Dutch people are similar, but German are even more, so you need to really dive deep into why you need this product, and it's not just because of an emotional trigger. So the desire topic here gets like even more logical, so you really need to think from a German perspective what would actually make sense. And if something, for example, is expensive, like if you have an expensive product, you really need to anchor it towards something that's even more expensive, like something that would cost them even more if they were not to get that product. So with influencers, that's like an interesting topic, because I definitely think that this is something that you need to adapt at some point if you enter a new
Hmm.
market. Because, for example, in the Netherlands, we have a very precise brand strategy, and we have a very precise budget on influencer marketing, which is helping us to also to also launch new products quickly and to make them successful. And for example, where we haven't invested into influencer and brand marketing, like countries like Germany, as much, we see that the new product launches are not that successful. So that's something to keep in mind. Like you can enter with localized UGC and you will do fine, but if you want to scale and really like penetrate a market, you need local creators, and a mix of local creators just works best. So I would do like micro influencers, key opinion leaders. Sometimes you can do like bigger celebrities who's known outside of Instagram, maybe from TV. And what really helps is also like having them in high quality shoots, so that you can add a different layer of authority. And that usually like drives a very good impact, just than influencers that you see on Instagram alone.
Do you usually have because at that scale, there's you mentioned influencers, content creators, etc., also other marketing options other than just running meta ads. Of course, you can produce content that will then be used as meta ads. Do you think it's necessary at that scale to have another layer of tracking in place, like attribution tools? Is that something, especially when you move into another market, is that something that is pretty relevant for you to get a better understanding what is working first touch, last touch, marketing mix modeling, etc.?
Yeah, I'm a very big fan of like attribution in general, and I would say that is kind of the advantage of coming from a media buying background, because it's very important for, in my opinion, for a creative strategist to really know how ads are being launched, scaled, and so on. And a lot of brands like to look at in-platform attribution, which you can use for comparison reasons, but I would not 100% rely on this. We use Triple Whale, like as most brands do, and we like to measure like the full impact of a campaign. And what I also like to see is if a campaign has a good first click ROAS, so that it will obviously not be like a 2 or 3 one, but if it's like in comparison to other campaigns, it's like a better ROAS on the first click basis, then that means that it's getting new customers in. And it's really important that you measure what audience segments that new experiments are actually bringing into your business. So you can do that from the like meta dashboard by breaking it down, but it's more important also like to have the overall picture where you are also like tracking your NCPA and your MER and like really tracking which campaigns are actually targeting new and existing customers, and if the first click campaigns are actually bringing in like revenue at like at least a break even level, so that you can actually work them towards your funnel. So that's something that is very important. I've also worked with other attribution tools which are great, like Attribute. I love Attribute. Like a big shout out to the team there, because it's a very like advanced tracking tool. So yeah.
Kurzer Hinweis in eigener Sache. Wenn du im Performance-Marketing arbeitest oder Creative Strategist bist, dann kennst du das Problem. Zu viele Creatives, zu wenig Zeit und keiner im Team weiß, was so wirklich funktioniert. Genau hier setzen wir mit DatAds an. Unsere Softwarelösung zeigt dir in Sekunden, welche deiner Ads wirklich performen. Egal ob auf Meta, TikTok oder YouTube. Das Beste daran, du bekommst datenbasierte Empfehlungen, wie du deine Creatives gezielt weiterentwickeln kannst. Mehr Klarheit, mehr Zeit, mehr Winning Creatives. Wenn du also deine Creative-Strategie jetzt auf das nächste Level bringen möchtest, dann schau doch einfach mal bei www.datads.io vorbei. Und jetzt geht's wieder zurück zur Episode. 100% shout out to Attributor that
Shout out.
We've been talking about that now we enter the German market. We have something sticking on the wall. We have now influencers on board. We now going more into expanding also on the creative side, because we see there's something here in Germany that there's an option to get Meroda out on the market. How do you think about the creative strategy now on that side? What do you see in 2025? What is most important for brands out there, not only on being not only on expanding on a more new market, but also for everybody in general that is running Facebook ads? What's currently, talking from a creative strategy standpoint, the most important topic in your opinion?
I would say it's very important to maintain a good speed of testing, because this is something that we're seeing that whoever is just moving faster is kind of also like collecting all the wins. So it's very important that you are like have the speed, and you can actually achieve that by building a diversity of like an agency and in-house team. So it's very important I would say not to rely only on agencies and not to rely only on in-house production. You definitely need a mix of both, just because you can make it happen in terms of creative diversity, like with both. But if you just rely on agencies, for example, the speed of delivery will probably be much slower than if you would do assets in-house. So I would say the speed of testing is super key, because by the time that you are waiting on delivery, another brand has already pushed out the concept that you wanted to push out, and that's never nice to see, because everyone is following everyone. I would also say you need to really, again, in terms of creative diversity, not just copy what brands are doing, like what kind of problem solution frameworks each and every UGC creator is following. So don't just, go into foreplay, copy a script, and then say, hey, ChatGPT, rewrite this for my brand, because this is not how it will work. I guarantee.
So goddamn true.
Yeah, so like you really need to dive, like, of course everyone uses AI, but you really need to dive deep into the concept, and like not only the concept alone, but kind of like trust your gut feeling. Do you think that this will actually perform well? Because in the end of the day, like, there are humans behind the camera and like behind the screen. So you really need to think of, will this actually have an impact? Like, will this make me stop scrolling? And not only like changing small elements, like, the text overlays, or like just you really like think about the visual hook that you will change in your ads, and have all kinds of different formats. So you really want like problem solution. You want like a more long form content. Even if it doesn't make sense for a beauty brand, let's say, you can do a podcast podcast. You can do like a format that is validated on UGC, then transfer it into a high quality production, then transfer it into a batch of static ads. So it's really important to kind of like maintain that messaging and that format and the concept along different along different assets. So that's something to keep in mind.
Since you also mentioned creative diversity a lot here, is maybe you can define in your own words, what do you understand by creative diversity? Is it exactly what you just mentioned, or what is in your own words creative diversity?
Yeah, it's exactly just having all kinds of formats and having them in different kind of scenarios. So let's say you have something that is like a problem solution or like an unboxing video even, or you just see like different content buckets performing well. You then transfer them over into like different settings. So you can do talking while application video, for example, for Meroda. You can do it at the vanity, and then you take this kind of like this concept and you transfer it to a car format, and then you transfer it to a high quality studio shoot, and then you also have the whole messaging that you have in your script in your static ads as well. So this really gives you kind of that full 360 kind of approach, and it's also very important to align that messaging with your brand team so that you're all following kind of like the same messaging, where of course performance has to be a lot more direct response and demand driven. So that's kind of where it all lies upon.
How do you keep track of all the different ad concepts that you just mentioned, of all the different ad angles? What's your best practice around the topic to keeping track of it, seeing what's performing best, how to adapt?
Of course, we use DatAds.
Uh,
So yeah, so no, really, this is something that I can't stress enough, like how important it is and like how it will also impact your speed when you can analyze at such a like good speed that you also deliver on your platform. Because I've used other creative analysis tools, but it's so annoying that they're super slow. They don't like innovate that fast as you do, and like all the AI features that you pull out in the last couple of weeks, I can't even keep up with them. So that's really amazing to see. But of course, like you need to really have a proper naming convention in mind and just include everything that is important to you. So you definitely need to keep track of the concepts and the formats that you're doing. If it's going to be with a voiceover, if it's going to be a silent one, who the creator is. And basically you create that tagging system for yourself where you can filter different reports and see what is actually performing well. And this is also something that we've been doing per country. So you can like just easily, and DatAds, of course, create different reports per country. And then it's very interesting to see if a concept is actually performing well across multiple countries. And something that I think not a lot of people are using is the comparative analysis option, where you can actually, tag different content and then just compare the results. Also, the new AI tagging feature is really cool that you implemented, because it really saves so much time, because you used to do that manually. So it was a pain.
True.
And you can also like really see if high quality content or UGC or like native ads, like more ugly ads, perform well. So that's very important, just to have like a naming convention that's clean and just contains the most important points that you want to compare and that will actually move the needle. So don't include like, I don't know, red color or just like some things that don't really make a difference, but really just the core concepts that you want to measure.
Actually, that's quite an important topic because so many people get lost when it comes to naming convention. Whenever I do the onboardings, etc., I still see so many fucking times video 3/copy. And I'm like, for real, is that even a thing? Because we talk so much about naming conventions, etc. Even at a high scale, it's still there. So it's very good that you also mentioned how important it is to have a good naming convention in place. It is very important, and we can't stress that enough. So what I would be interested in, because also, now we have over 1,500 ad accounts connected to DatAds, but still, whenever I take a look, not everybody's using the full potential. In your case, when you have so many creatives for different countries, etc., maybe you can also a little bit disclose how your structure looks like, how you structure and how you analyze those ads within DatAds with the naming convention, to get a better understanding of what to produce next. Because the one thing is, okay, of course, you can just sort also in the ads manager, what's the ad that drives the most purchases, the best ROAS, the most spend, whatever it is that you're most focused on, or gets the highest hook. But how do you actually do it when there's like thousands of ads active at one moment? So maybe you can give like an example Christine, how you actually analyze whether if it's in the ads manager or within DatAds, or on what kind of KPIs you take a look at, but also on the groups, because you also mentioned comparative analysis. Maybe you can give your point of view how you take a look at analyzing creatives.
Yeah. So a naming convention won't like come overnight, and especially like if you're just starting out and you need to obviously rename your full ad account, this will be a pain. But like you don't need to rename your full ad account, like just rename the like most spending ads so you can use them in your filters, because obviously the other ones, they will not like really make any difference. So you can just start out by renaming all the like big spenders and the ones that are driving impact. So that's what is like super important as step one. And then step two is just like define the naming convention that everyone in your company is going to be aligned on, not only for the ads manager, but also like for your drive naming convention, because a lot of times you want to reuse an ad for something and then you look it up in the ads manager, but then you don't know how to find it anywhere and reuse it for whatever purposes it might be needed for. So it's very important to kind of keep the naming convention of the ad the same as the file name. And what we like to include in our naming convention is usually the market that it's targeting. We have the agency, or if it's an agency that it's delivered by, or if it's in-house. We also have a split by use cases. So we have a list of the use cases that we use at Meroda, and we have a number assigned to each and every one of them so that we can actually filter out which use case drives the most impact. So use cases can be, for us and for our changing foundation example, daily routine, simple routine, mature skin. So like it's basically everything that is targeting that kind of messaging, and one use case can have infinite angles. So we don't really filter by angles because it can be very different, and that's not the core idea. The core idea is like really seeing what use case is going to drive the impact and not which angle. So if it's something that's super prominent, like let's say the 5-minute makeup routine, then you can tag it as well in your naming convention, but we like to keep it on a higher level. So we also include the creator name. We also include like the language, and if it's with and without a voiceover. So it's kind of like very clean and efficient. Like it's not too much. I don't think it has more than 10 identifiers in it, but it just really allows us to create those dedicated reports on a higher level and see what's actually moving the needle with us.
Gotcha. And once you have those names included, how do you actually go there in the practice? Like is it that you check those parameters on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis? When do you decide actually to focus on a specific, I don't know, ad concept to double down on that one because it's showing significant increase in spend, in a better ROAS, in a better new customer acquisition cost, etc. How do you go about that? Is it you do it on a weekly basis, monthly, and maybe you can also give us a little bit of insights on how you go about this one.
Yeah. So usually when you launch ads, you want to have at least like 3-4 days to start getting the data. So like you can't do it every day, obviously, but you definitely need to have like smaller deep dives in to the creative performance every week. So seeing like what has been launched in the last 7 days and what the performance looks like. So you can easily filter this by the last launch report. So we kind of have that filtered by our testing campaigns and just seeing what actually moves the needle. And we also like follow our KPIs, which are based on a ROAS target. So like we look which ones are actually fulfilling our ROAS targets and which ones are scalable. And then we also have the ones that are opportunities. So we look at lower, like at soft metrics like CTR and hook ratio. So that's kind of something where we see the opportunity might lie in and where we need to do like quick fixes. So when it comes like to like net new concept production, it usually, of course, always takes time, especially if you want to work with UGC creators. So we need to work 1 month ahead. So it wouldn't like be realistic to, have something today and then have it delivered like tomorrow from a UGC creator. Like it might happen at some point, hopefully, but that's not the case yet. So usually you would do it every week and just see which one, like which ads you can actually iterate on quickly in-house and like see what raw content can we actually use to like exaggerate that messaging even more, this is something that you can create very fast with your in-house video editors. And if it's like a broader concept that you want to produce, then you usually have a monthly deep dive into the ad account where you actually look very specifically into the formats and to the concept. Is it a high quality shoot? Is it like a low fee, like a UGC or a lifestyle video or whatever? And what exactly do you want to double down on in the upcoming month? So it's kind of like a mixed structure. That's why I also like to have a pod structure of the team, which is divided by market and by specialist, because I don't really like the idea of having generalists. Because it gets really mixed up, and especially if you want to track your cost per asset, which is like another important thing to track because of your efficiency, it gets very mixed up because you kind of need to divide the whole, workload into like a percentage of each like team member, and it gets really mixed up. So ideally, you want to have is a strategist that only focuses on UGC, another one that focuses on high quality shoots, another one that focuses on mashups and statics, and so on. And then you also have dedicated video editors to each pot, graphic designers, influencer managers, copywriters, blah, blah, blah. So this is how it gets really easy to track how much an asset actually costs you instead of having those generalists. And you also get the strategist to really be in that mindset and to also like own that area, because everyone that owns his area can also easily iterate on that area. So that is kind of the structure that I think is more efficient.
That was very insightful, but of course, only possible for brands that have a certain scale to have that
Of
many
course.
specialists.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate goal, where you actually should be, to have like a high outflow of a lot of new creatives being launched on the ads manager. When we zoom out a little bit, what were your 3 major learnings from expanding Meroda internationally? Can you maybe share like what, even if it's just your biggest learning, like something that was totally new to you after working with Meroda for such a prolonged time? What was your biggest learning, or like if you have 3, you can also share 3, of course, learnings from expanding Meroda into other EU countries?
I would say, and this is not only for Meroda, but for every brand, is of course you have to like first localize. I know we wish we could all make just one asset, like one English asset, which would run everywhere. And it would also be like the most cost efficient one, but unfortunately this doesn't work. So you really need to adapt everything in terms of creative, messaging, payments, logistics, language, whatever. And second is really to start up with an MVP. So you don't need to, of course, if you have the budget, and invest heavily into performance and brand and community building in a market, that would be great. But a lot of brands watching this will probably not be on that level. So I would say stay consistent, but like start with the MVP and validate it first before you really start investing heavily. And you just need to gradually scale up, and then invest into zero, community building, whatever. So you just set your milestones for yourself if you're serious about growing in that market long term. And another very important thing to do is also to hire talent that knows the market. So this is very important, especially if you want to expand into Germany or into France or Spain. You need local talent that know the language, that know the mindset, especially when it comes to creative strategists. So at Meroda, for example, we are always on the watch for the best talent that we can get from each market. So if you're a German creative strategist that loves beauty, call me. But yeah,
I
it's
will
very
put in
important.
your contact details.
But I'm definitely, I'm serious about this. So yeah, it's very important that you don't rely on people that don't know the market, because they will not know how to speak to that specific market. So yeah, these are kind of like the key 3 things. I think there were 3.
Since people love specific numbers, based on your experience, what would you say is the minimum budget? If you already mentioned you should test at least for a month to be able actually to identify if a market is working or not. What would you say is like the minimum budget someone should spend to test a market, and the minimum amount of creatives that should fly into that test flight? To have like an MVP, because you mentioned the MVP, it's important. So maybe if you can give a rough number and a rough number of creators, that would be awesome for some people listening, I guess.
Yeah. If it's amount of assets, I would say at least your 20 top performing videos and your 30 best performing statics. So you can easily start with those, but like a more precise like calculation you could do is just always invest between 5 to 10% of your ad spend per month. So that will keep you kind of like at a healthy level of testing without overwhelming your team and like without overwhelming your budgets. And especially if you tie your forecasts to the creative volume targets, it's a very manageable budget. So like as long as you can keep track of the cost per asset. And yeah, so basically you can just invest 5 to 10% of the ad spend every month. And this will also help you with the creative volume that is needed to be scaling up, because creative volume always matters. So yeah.
100%, 100%. And also diversity, as you mentioned before.
Yeah.
So also highlighting here the diversity aspect. Do you have a tip, like a secret tip for a European country that is flourishing at the moment, where you expanded and where you were like surprised by the results that it generated? Is there something secret that you can share here in this podcast, like a secret European country which is totally underutilized, where actually there's buying power, there's people very familiar for e-commerce and ready to buy?
Yeah, so I will definitely say again, like like Eastern European countries like Poland, Czech Republic, Romania, just because like you can also stack them for the beginning and then start to localize. But again, because these are markets where e-commerce is just starting to really thrive, and buyers are very emotional. So you can really use some emotional triggers, and especially
Nice.
women, they will be very, very keen to buy. So you don't really need to go into that logical kind of mindset there. You can really just use all kinds of emotional aspects, and it will be very, very fast to scale if you have the right budget. So I would definitely say don't underestimate Eastern Europe.
I also want to take a look here onto upcoming trends and an outlook for the future. At the moment, what role does AI play in your day-to-day operations for creative strategy? And what role do you think it will play when we take a look at the next 2 to 3 years? How do you think about AI, especially for expansion, but also in creative strategy in general? So to summarize, what's the current status? How do you specifically utilize it for Meroda? And what's your take for the next 2 to 3 years?
I would say in my network, I don't know any creative strategist that doesn't use AI. If you don't use AI, you are missing out a lot,
You're
obviously. And
lost.
you're very
Yeah.
lost. Like, and I'm not talking about ChatGPT only. I mean, this is just kind of like, your new google.com that you open up. So, it's kind of like you really need to play around a lot with AI and really don't just use simple prompts, but really train AI to think as you do. Because, for example, ChatGPT is not really trained to be a creative strategist. Like it can be very, yeah, it's not like really going in depth, and it's not really trained to do the work that actually it's required to do or you would like it to do. So first, like if you're using ChatGPT, you really need to learn how to create custom prompts. So for example, my own ChatGPT is just my own brain. So I have trained it with all kind of different custom prompts that are based on creative strategy, like as a whole, like what type of mindset I have, and also like on marketing fundamentals. So like everything that you would need for like a direct response script, or just things that ChatGPT wouldn't just do on its own. And I also love to use Cloud AI because it's like much better at script writing. And
Yep.
if like this is just for script writing, and then of course you have all the other video and asset generation tools like Flare, HeyGen, like I love Opus because, for example, Opus you can use for podcasts where you can just split a clip into like 10 smaller clips and really give it the tone of voice and kind of the style that you wanted to have. So if you have a long form video, you can just split it into smaller videos and test them very fast. So again, this comes back to speed. So the faster you utilize all those assets and like all those AI tools that are available on the market, you will be just able to double down on your creative volume and be much faster than everyone that is just using a ChatGPT prompt to generate an image that will look fake anyway. So you really like, it's not just using the minimum effort and with ChatGPT, but really like using Google AI Studio, for example. I love Google AI Studio to just upload videos and just ask it to identify patterns that humans wouldn't identify, for example, because that's where it get really interesting. Like it's like one of the few tools where you can actually upload video content, and it will analyze it frame by frame, and then you can actually see what you might have been missing on. So that is something more advanced. And yeah, so like these are just one bunch of the tools that I'm using on a daily basis, but definitely make use of every new AI tool you see on the market and train it and really get good at prompt engineering, because I feel like being a creative strategist nowadays, it's also like being a prompt engineer, because you need to know what exactly to ask for. So that is very important.
That's maybe also a good blog where we can actually mention that all those updates we also utilize in DatAds in that case. So all the Google, Gemini, etc. and all that stuff is actually now also available in DatAds. So you don't need to worry about being the next prompt engineer. Of course, you should also understand how it works, but also we try to make your life as a creative strategist here easier. And that's also one of the few things that will come in the future and is already available. Awesome. That was a lot of good input on that side. So thanks for also sharing all your tools that you utilize on a daily basis, Christine. And thank you also for the podcast. Now we come to the end of it. You shared a full masterclass basically on creative strategy, on international expansion. So thank you for your time digging that deep into your daily procedures, how people can actually expand their brands to other European countries and expand in general. So thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thank you. It was great. And I hope we can dive deep into AI in the next podcast, because I have a lot to share as well. So yeah.
I think we can definitely record a second one.
Yeah. Thank you.